Welcome to today's episode of the Cross Labs podcast, On My Mind.
Okay, I have a science topic. Last Thursday, I said, what if we treat every script writer as a different fine-tune of a LLM, right? I also remember that one time we were talking in a different Tuesday. What if we would actually go to movies regardless if the movie is bad and film companies were just giving us like a good favor by producing decent movies? If you just think about a story as a bunch of notes, there is a set universe of notes, and that's something like well studied in like tragedies and all these other genres. Wouldn't it only make sense for a statistical model to say like, hey, this is what you need for whatever movie you want to make, and then fill the gaps with an actual LLM, and that's it. That's your movie script.
I think you can do that. People have studied the formulas for stories. I think that I have seen stuff which turns that into sort of generative, GoFi style generative modeling, where they by hand create that graph and create the Mad Libs thing and just basically let it fill it. The place where it's kind of dangerous either way is you will get kind of generic crap from doing that. Is there actually going to be the incentive to make it not crap, or will people just kind of say, well, this is generic crap, but whatever, I'm entertained for today, and not actually hold anyone to account for not producing something actually good?
In my case, I'm thinking movies as a business, not as an art form, that they also are, but as a business. I don't know if any of you saw Bullet Train, the movie with Brad Pitt. Let's just say it's terrible.
Yeah.
But it still made $250 million or something like that. If you're running a business and you can literally just output something that is terrible and make money with it, then that doesn't seem like a bad idea.
I'm saying the danger is that it's not a bad idea. Like this is the risk that the advancement of the technology creates for people who are enjoying, a certain level of quality, that it makes the balance economically favor making crap. So before it could be like, well, you're going to pay writers anyway because you have to, so you might as well pay good ones because they don't cost that much more and get a slightly better movie out of it. You either want the AI tech to be good enough that it actually can produce things that are good, or there needs to be impose some economic incentive on the companies to not put out crap, or you're going to get crap.
Normally, people always use the same examples of AI making like weird stuff that humans would never make. The antenna for this satellite that is like in a weird shape.
Yeah, it's not AI.
That's an evolutionary algorithm.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just repeating what I saw on the YouTube post.
All right.
As any scientist would do.
We can debate whether AI and an evolutionary algorithm is the same thing, but AI is like...
I cannot believe how quick you were to like, that's not AI, that's not... Anyway, so they always use that AI example. How come that whenever you hear discussions of LLMs being creative or stable diffusion being creative or whatever, it's like, no, if you train it in crap that human makes, it's going to make crap. It's not going to be like the next Picasso. But then Picasso never saw a Picasso before he did one. So at some point, something's going to create something, no?
Oh, so it's not keep in mind with all of these things, there are human users of the thing, and the human user is not irrelevant to the process. If I just sample null prompts out of Stable Diffusion, I will just get crap that it's seen before, or things like what it's seen before, and usually not really good things, because it won't even have any kind of unified subject. But if I prompt it, if I modify the prompt to get a result that I want, if I modify the latent to get a result that I want, if I start using control nets, if I start doing upscaling or, in painting or all of these things that are actually human artistic process, then I can absolutely get things that are higher quality on average than the training data that, will highlight certain aspects that the training data touches on, but amplify them and exaggerate them to make something that is distinct and new. The thing with GPT, if you have a writer who's using GPT to get inspiration, but then is just writing over it or looking at different phrasings that GPT suggests, but then actually making their own choice at the end, then there's nothing saying that that's going to be automatically a bad quality piece of work because GPT was involved in the process. It's going to be as good as the writer is capable of producing, and maybe slightly better where GPT actually manages to get them unstuck or give them some inspiration. But if you just hit generate on GPT, yeah, you'll get generic stuff.
I wonder if you give a prompt like make the script of Fast and Furious 9, if it will make a better story than actual Fast and Furious, because that movie is terrible.
Well, that's not too hard.
Well, I think that's Oneris's point, right? that the average of the distribution may be better than some of the things that actually get published anyway.
Published and like money making, like Transformers is wow. Then I would say that when I become president of the world, I would just forbid movie studios from making advertisement. If it's only word of mouth, then that's it.
Don't know.
Tarantino doesn't, like, when he makes a movie, I don't see posters of Django Unchained everywhere. I don't know if in the US, but not in Colombia. And people go and see it.
I see very little advertisements these days, so I don't really feel that I have an idea of what advertisements people are seeing.
Actually, yeah. So a guy who lives in a forest and a guy who lives in an island are talking about advertisement.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. Oneris, you're the film person. Like, what's your...
My take is, I think the industry has given a bunch of really creative people a chance to be creative and make awesome stuff. Christopher Nolan was hired to make the trilogy of Batman, and the second one is one of the best movies I've seen in my life. But then the market is like, it's all right. So if you're a film studio and you will spend 2 years making a masterful piece of art, but it will not perform better than Suicide Squad that took a year and just like Margot Robbie, Will Smith, and whoever else. I mean, it's a business. I would love for all superhero movies to be directed by Christopher Nolan, but well, no, that's dumb. I would love all superhero movies to be as good as that one from Christopher Nolan, but if they don't make money, I understand why the studios just choose whoever is the trendy actor and actress and go with it. Then the question I have is the strike from the Writers Guild. I understand a little bit of the logic behind it, but I think it's something so inevitable that it's going to happen with AI taking over that craft. But yeah, it just troubles me a lot because, well, I'm supposed to be the film guy.
I think what's going to end up happening is that you are going to get the more artsy and curated stuff moving to satisfy particular niches and kind of living in the fat tail, which even without AI, that's how it tends to go anyway.
I mean, yeah, but at what point will AI be good enough to then also take over that niche?
Well, I think the thing is that it's not like AI takes over or doesn't take over. It's a specific kind of workflow that could take over, not take over. And I think the very nature of the push button generation means that kind of push button generation stays separate from the individual niches, because the push button generation has a tendency towards expressing the mean of the distribution of stuff, which in a fat-tailed distribution of interest will only cover so much.
How difficult it is for a statistical model to be like, oh, this was a happy accident, I'll just keep going with it, if it's outside of the distribution.
That's what Stable Diffusion does. Essentially, it's given noise to start, and it has to see patterns in the noise and try to like refine them more and more and more towards something that actually looks like a real image. But it's always working with the noise, and so it'll often start and like say like, okay, this fluctuation, I'm going to try to make a face out of it, and it might simultaneously decide like this other fluctuation over here, I'm going to make an apple out of it. And then once it's decided that, it kind of has to make it work, so it makes the rest of the image like fit. But you still need someone who can look at 1,000 images and say, this is the one that's actually revolutionary.
I bet when they did Amelie, they knew they were out of distribution, but they also knew that was going to be amazing. Because there must be something in whatever that script is that they knew what to break, basically.
They had an idea of what could be broken and still be good. Probably for everyone who tries to make Amelie, 10 people fail. Or for everyone who makes a successful Amelie, there are 10 people who try things that end up failing. But I think the problem is the LLM usually isn't going to try to make an Amelie. It's going to try to make Spider-Man. And if you want to keep generating Spider-Man until you happen to luck into Amelie, you're not going to generate 10. You're going to generate, 100 million. And you're going to still need people to sit there and read those 100 million scripts to pick out the one that actually ended up being the Amelie.
So basically the migration of the craft of being a scriptwriter might be just a good curator.
Well, I mean, I think being a good curator is like one of the big parts of doing anything with AI.
Also pretty interesting that the film guy is the one who wants to automate everything and lose his friends without a job.
That's it for this week's episode of the Cross Labs podcast On My Mind. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you'll be the first to know when the next episode is out. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.